What's happening, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here, of course. Bring you another episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. It's good to be back in a familiar setting with the backdrop behind me representing, of course, my favorite football team, and for the majority of the folks that tune into this podcast, your favorite football team as well, the Buffalo Bills. Of course, we are early in free agency here. We're about a week into it, the new league year, so to speak. A lot of moving parts in terms of what we've seen thus far in comparison around the league. Not much going on at One Bills Drive thus far yet. I say yet because I expect plenty more moves to come over the course of the free agency period, of course. And to be quite fair, I think a lot of moving parts had to take place in order for the Bills to be players in free agency at the rate that they have been thus far, albeit maybe not at the rate that most of us thought that they would be, right? We thought they'd maybe be a little bit more active. They've only added a couple players, but I want to talk about these players. Two players that I really like and two players that I thought were great additions to this team and much needed additions to these teams, to this team rather. So the Bills have added speed, and they've also added versatility in free agency thus far with two signings, one being Deontay Hardy, wide receiver, and Connor McGovern, an offensive guard. And I've given my thoughts on Deontay Hardy via an article that I wrote for 24/7 Buffalo Fandemonium. The Bills have had a need for speed. You look atop the AFC, all the teams that have been a thorn in the side of the Buffalo Bills, whether it's the Cincinnati Bengals, whether it's the Kansas City Chiefs, or even some of the teams that are on the come-up within the AFC, like the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Los Angeles Chargers, they all have speed at the skill positions, whether it's wide receiver or running back, and the Buffalo Bills have recognized that they need to add speed at the wide receiver position. They need to potentially add speed at the running back position. And Deontay Hardy is a very interesting start because Deontay Hardy last season didn't really have much of a season due to injury. But 2 years ago, this was a guy that was able to kind of stake his claim within the New Orleans Saints offense as a speedster, a mismatch to the opposing defense. No one on an opposing defense can really cover him due to the fact that he's got that quick burst and that RAC, that rack, the run after catch or yak, yards after catch ability that Buffalo Bills, Brandon Beane, the general manager, the Bills general manager that is Brandon Beane, he has preached that the Bills have needed to add this type of dimension to this offense, and yet the fact that we're seeing it with this signing, I think, is a sign that Brandon Beane is actually putting his money where his mouth is. Now, I want you guys to, of course, fire away your comments in the comment section below. You can follow along the show at Ryan Thomas Take on Twitter and Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook as well, of course, is where you can find the visual side of things of this show, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Now, in terms of Hardy and how he fits, when Brandon talked about this addition, he stated that he felt that Hardy would fit the wide receiver 4 role that they want out of their wide receiver 4, that they didn't get out of their wide receiver 4, whether it was Isaiah McKenzie, whether it was Jamison Crowder, or some of these players that have kind of just been hodgepodge of wide receivers that have been kind of grouped in to that wide receiver 4 room, or that role, rather. As well, last season when the Bills made the addition to get Nyheim Hines, we thought we'd see Nyheim Hines more so out of the backfield. We only really saw Nyheim Hines essentially as a kick returner. Deontay Hardy's an all-pro kick returner. So I do expect to see Hardy mixed in there as well, but I do think the skill set is being misrepresented for the most part. And that skill set is the simple fact that most people think Hardy's a slot guy, he'll line up in the slot, he'll be a speed mismatch in the slot. Well, the majority of the time, Deontay Hardy actually lined up out wide and was more of a deep ball threat for the New Orleans Saints as a guy that had the speed to stretch the field. And that's a dynamic to this offense that Josh Allen has been begging the brass, the powers that be, whether it's Brandon Beane or Sean McDermott, to add to this offense and to bring in guys that can stretch the field and allow him to utilize that cannon for an arm that he has. So I'm very curious to see, come training camp time, come preseason time, to take a look and see how Hardy is actually used. To take a look and see just how are the Buffalo Bills going to use Deontay Hardy as a wide receiver 4 or just purely as a weapon in this offense. Secondly, Connor McGovern as an offensive guard addition. Most people on Bills Twitter feeds, most people on the Facebook pages, forums, whatever you want to call it, social media rather, they're debating whether or not the Buffalo Bills should draft an offensive lineman in the first or in the second round. And the first move that the Bills make is they go out and they get an offensive guard named Connor McGovern, and it is the good Connor McGovern because there's two of them. One played for the Dallas Cowboys, the other played for the New York Jets, New Jersey Jets, as I like to make that joke. McGovern, this one, played for the Dallas Cowboys. This one was a starter. This one played plenty of positions during his time as an offensive lineman in Dallas, and Dallas has been known to have a very good offensive line, not just via pass blocking, but run blocking as well, and Connor McGovern has been one of those guys. I like this move for a wide variety of reasons, not just due to the reasons I just stated. The experience is there, the good experience is there, the starting experience is there, but the versatility is there for Connor McGovern to play left guard, to play center, to play right guard. Any one of those positions, you could see Connor McGovern be a starter on this Buffalo Bills offensive line because, frankly, this Buffalo Bills offensive line was nowhere near as good as we wanted it to be, nowhere near as good as we thought it would be, and the Bills needed to make an addition via free agency. There were a few names out there. Ben Powers was one of them. Dalton Risner is another. Connor McGovern, they're able to bring him in. One of those three guys I was hoping would come to the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills were able to bring McGovern along, which is great. I feel like he's going to be a left guard right out of the gate. He'll be the starting left guard for the Buffalo Bills right out of the gate, week 1, and will be a much better player at that position than what we've seen in years past. I know Roger Saffold could potentially, pun and back in the fold, brought back as a right guard potentially, but this Buffalo Bills offensive line was far too much of a pass-blocking offensive line. Didn't necessarily have that multi-layered skill set of run blocking and or pass blocking, whereas now the Bills have a guard brought into the fold that's very well versed in both of those areas, being that Dallas is a 50-50 offense, running the ball, passing the ball. Buffalo trying to get more balanced, I think, under year 2 of Ken Dorsey in comparison to year 1, as well as in comparison to the previous years with Brian Dable. So this is a fun move, and I don't expect these to be the only moves in free agency that the Bills make. A lot of people are asking me right now, what do I anticipate in terms of the future, in terms of this offseason for the Buffalo Bills? What direction do I think they could go in? There's a lot of different directions that they could go in, frankly, and one over the other, my preference is to just continue to add that bring to add a unique addition that can be that difference maker addition to your team in free agency due to the salary cap. But is it tough for free agency due to a player in the draft? The draft is imperfect, few master